Good morning, everyone. Excuse me. Good morning and welcome to another edition of Aquarium Online Academy. Thanks for your patience as we were working out some little kinks this morning and making sure we could broadcast everything to you. But here we are live at the Aquarium of the Pacific in Long Beach, California. My name is Amanda, and I'm so excited that you decided to join us because even though our doors are closed right now, we are going to provide you with a special opportunity to join us inside the aquarium virtually from the comfort of your own home or wherever you happen to be watching this today. So I hope you're ready to go exploring because we are going to explore a couple different habitats that we have here at the aquarium. And we're going to see what we can discover. But I would invite you to join along with us by contacting us live at, you can either text in your questions to us at 562-286-1838, or if you'd like to, if you're watching this at a later time and we've already aired the program, but you still have questions as you're watching, you can contact us anytime at live at lbaop.org, and we will respond to those questions because we want you to question. We want you to wonder about things. And when questions come up, we want to be able to provide you some answers too. So we are here for you as your resource at any time. But during this program, we would love to hear from you at the text number if you're able to text in any questions that you have. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started by looking at an exhibit that we have here at the aquarium that's modeled after a real dive site off the coast of Catalina in our water right here in Southern California. This is what we call Blue Cavern. So this is a look into our Blue Cavern habitat. Now, when I mention a habitat, obviously a habitat is a home for animals. And this habitat is a home for many animals right here. And I'd like you to look around and let us know what you're noticing. Because as we look at this habitat, there are some interesting animals, but there's also some different features of this habitat. And we'd like to know what it is, as I'm being pushed off the screen by this big fish here, what it is that you see in this habitat that might make it special. Because as I mentioned, we're going to look at two different habitats. So how would you describe this habitat? What do you see inside of it? And a habitat is made up of living and non-living things. So what in here do you see that might be non-living? And what do you see that is living? And what do you notice about it? Now, again, you're welcome to text us, but you're also welcome to just shout out at your screen. What are the things that you notice? Let's start with the non-living things. So a non-living thing probably isn't moving, is it? So is there anything in here that you don't see moving, but that might be an important part of this habitat? Well, there's definitely some moving things there. Well, one of the things I'm noticing is right in pretty much the center of our exhibit, but down at the bottom. And right here in our screen, we have these two large lumps, or maybe even three, I guess. That might be one further back. So we have some rocks, and rocks are important in this habitat for a few different reasons. What is the purpose of a rock? How might it be beneficial? Does it help anything out? Does it provide any sort of protection or a place for anything else to grow? Do you see anything that might be living on these rocks? Think about if you've ever been to a lake or the ocean, if there's ever anything that you see on the beach that might be attached to a rock. Do you see anything attached to the rocks here? Well, I definitely noticed some things that seem to be moving in an upward direction. We have some important, normally I would say, life in here. Although we do have some, I do have a little secret to tell you a little bit later about what you're noticing. Of course, it's kind of hard to look at the rocks when you have these big, huge fish that are swimming right by the camera and blocking the view. But, you know, they kind of look like the rocks. Do you notice that? Do you see anything about these fish that remind you of the rocks that we're also seeing? Oh, and some observations. Christina notices sticks and rocks. So, Christina, you and I were thinking the same thing. Those obvious things right in front of us. And as those fish were swimming by, did you notice the colors were kind of similar to the rock? In fact, even the shape was kind of similar to the rock. And where do you think those fish spend most of their time? Do you think, well, I'll give you one clue. Our camera is down here at the bottom of the exhibit. And I do seem to see those fish around the bottom of the exhibit in our view a lot. So it makes sense. They look kind of like rocks. They kind of hang out down by the rocks too. So So it's a way that they can camouflage. So these are providing a healthy way, a nice way for them to kind of camouflage in this exhibit too, for those fish. And those fish, I will tell you right now, just like you might imagine, because they are so big, they do have the name giant in their name. And if anyone's watching and you happen to know what those fish are called, it's giant something. And I'm just kind of curious because I know some of you watch these and you've probably learned the name of that fish already, so I'm not going to tell you yet. But if anyone would like to text in what the name of those giant fish are here with these spots on them that are kind of camouflaging with those rocks, feel free to let me know. And getting back to those rocks though, what do you see? And Christina also mentioned sticks, and I do see something that looks almost like kind of sticks coming up from them. And so here we have algae. And this algae, when you see algae, like really big algae, we refer to that as seaweed. You've probably seen seaweed on the beach, or if you've been swimming in a lake, maybe you felt it between your toes. So seaweed is a type of algae that is very large and able to be seen. And this type of algae that you see behind me here is a very particular type of algae that we call kelp. And so this kelp right here is growing all the way up to the surface. And if you notice the color of it, this kind of colors that you see in here, what kind of colors do you notice? Well, I definitely see some rays of the sun coming down. It looks like white light coming down into the water. And then I also see some green. I also see some yellow. And actually the kelp itself is a type of a brown algae. Do you notice any sort of brown hints in that color right there? But yeah, I see a lot of brown and greens and yellows in this type of habitat. And so this is a kelp forest. When you have a lot of kelp that's all growing together in one area, we call it a forest. Just like if you have one tree by itself, you refer to it as a tree. But if you have a whole bunch of trees in an area, we refer to that as a forest. So this is our kelp forest underwater. And our blue cavern habitat is actually modeled after a kelp forest off of Catalina Island. And so, we have some more observations coming in. And someone was questioning maybe if there were puffer fish that they saw. So maybe we can go back to our blue cavern exhibit and take a look and see if there's anything else that we can notice and observe. So we saw the rocks, we saw these big fish. Now someone was maybe wondering if that puffer fish, maybe these, because they've gotten so big, they look like they're all puffed up. Except pufferfish tend to have little things on their bodies. They have a little bit more of a rounder shape. This shape of this fish, you will notice, is much more like a football shape. We call that fusiform. In fact, let's look around and see if you can find any other fusiform shaped fish in here that are kind of that football shape. So, and some of you were asking about this kelp right here and asking, what are these things? So this right here is the kelp. So the kelp that we have in this particular view in our exhibit, you can see a little bit more of that brown color. That picture we were showing you before was also kelp, but it looked a little bit more like this color right here. So it kind of depends on the lighting that you're in, and it might be dependent on the lighting in our exhibit, but also this kelp here is artificial. So it's not the same as what we were just looking at a moment ago. And my friend, Miss Talia, is here in the studio, and she's the one who's bringing up these beautiful images behind me so we can see what's in our exhibit and also what might be outside of our exhibits. And then my friend, Miss Emily, is sitting at the computer and responding to your text questions and relaying those to me. So there are three of us here today bringing this program to you. And so thank you, Talia and Emily, for your help. And Christina also noticed that the fish have spots on their bodies. So very good observation, Christina. See all those spots? That's one of the ways you can help identify this big fish, because they are known for having spots. And also, did you notice the dark fins? Look at how dark their fins are. Their tail fins, their fins on the top, the fins on the bottom. They have dark fins. In fact, they're even a little bit darker overall on the top than they are on the bottom. That's kind of interesting, huh? But I did say they are a giant, and giant is part of their name. So what kind of giant fish are they? Well, let's keep looking around and see what other fish we see. This one doesn't look so giant, and it doesn't look so much like a puffer fish, but let's keep looking and see if we can find anything else that resembles what could be puffer fish or any other interesting markings that you see on the fish. Do you see any other fish that have spots like that big giant one did? There comes that giant one in the background. This one doesn't have spots. What do you notice that it has? Do you see the stripes? Now, do you want to learn something interesting? When we refer to fish, we refer to stripes that go up and down like this, like bars, kind of like the bars of a jail. And so those are what we would call bars on that fish. A stripe we reserve for the lines that go horizontally across the fish. So a striped fish tends to be ones with lines going this way, and a barred fish has lines going this way. So we'll have to keep our eyes open today and see if we can find any more striped or barred fish with those lines on their body. All right, I'm going to move out of the way, let you make some more observations about this. Oh, also another good observation came in from Christina about the cracks in the rocks. So do you notice how it looks like there are these lines right here? Now, these lines can be made naturally by rocks, as rocks are being formed and put together by different sediments that are forming them, and as they break apart. So there are natural lines in lots of different rocks. Now, these rocks, again, aren't true rocks. They're artificial, just like the artificial kelp that we have. We make it look like the real thing so the animals can enjoy it, but it's also a lot lighter, so it's easier for us to move them around when we need to work with them and do maintenance inside the exhibit or do any other types of cleaning. But good observations. And those cracks might also help animals have a place to hide and also might help them camouflage. We were talking about those bars and those stripes on those fish. And so we had I believe that was a barred sand bass. I could be wrong, but that one with the bars, those stripes going up and down, might have been a barred sand bass. And then someone said some fish are small and some are large. Another very good observation. And they all get along so well living in this habitat. Now remember how we said that these fish tend to stay at the bottom. And there are some other fish, though, that we see kind of swimming in the mid-water area. And if we can move our camera up to the top, you might even see different fish at the very surface of the water. But I don't know if anyone happened to notice, there was something that was swimming over there in the corner, swimming by. Now also, there are so many different types of fish. I love looking at all these fish. Oh my goodness, look at this one. We didn't see this one yet. Do you notice how different this one looks compared to the other fish? That one has a really kind of funny pinkish sort of color in the middle. Here's a much better picture where you can see the colors. But it's got this bright white chin, a dark face, like black at the front and black at the back. Although this one's a little bit more of the pinkish color and the pinkish in the middle. This is called a California sheephead. Sheephead is kind of a funny name, but if you look at it, well, I don't know. I don't see a sheep. Do you see a sheep? Does that look like a sheep face to you, a sheephead? I don't know exactly where they get their name from, but they're called California sheephead, and they are really interesting fish. Now, you can see a little bit of the teeth out here, but you will be surprised at one of the things they like to eat. California sheephead will eat something that's very pokey. We were talking about pufferfish and looking to see if we could find any pufferfish in this exhibit, and I didn't see any. And we don't typically have pufferfish in the waters in Southern California because our water temperatures are a little bit cooler than what pufferfish like. They tend to like the warmer tropical water habitats. And here in California, our water is a little bit cooler, and so it's perfect for animals like this, like the California sheephead, and the food that they like to eat. They like to eat these little pokey balls that are purple, and they're called sea urchins. Have you heard of a sea urchin before? They're kind of funny and weird looking. They don't really look like animals, but they are animals with these spikes all over their body. And here's a great picture of one too. I also want you to notice what the urchin is sitting on. What do you think this stuff is? Does it look familiar? If you were thinking it looked a lot like the kelp forest that we were looking at, you are right. This is a blade of kelp, and this is the favorite food of this little pokey guy right here, the sea urchin. Sea urchins have their mouth on the bottom of their body, and their mouth, they don't have a cute little, 2 eyes and a nose and a mouth. They have their mouth right in the center of their body, and they have 5 teeth that all kind of come together in a circle shape to allow them to eat kelp and algae that's living on the rocks. And then they have these purple spines all over the rest of their body to help protect them. Now, if you were to touch one, you can touch it gently. It won't hurt you. It doesn't have any toxins. The purple sea urchin doesn't have any toxins in their spines that would hurt. But you wouldn't want to step on one, because if you were to step on one, just like stepping on a Lego, it doesn't feel very good. And you wouldn't want those spines to break off inside your skin because that would be very uncomfortable. You could get a bacterial infection, but if you were to just gently touch them, it is okay. They're not going to hurt you. It's just you have to be careful. It's kind of like a big ball of toothpicks. But my friend Miss Talia brought up this great view of the mouth of the sea urchin. So if you were to flip over the underside and see what they look like on the bottom, this right here is where its mouth is. So isn't that strange? They have a circle-shaped mouth. And then they have 5 little triangle teeth that all fit together perfectly right in the center to allow them to eat kelp. They also have these smaller little things that help them to kind of chew up their food and move it to their mouth. So they have the long spines, but also between those long spines, they have something called tube feet. And you might even see this little, see that circle right there? That's the end of one of their tube feet. It allows them to stick to things, kind of like suction cups. And so it's kind of hard to see here because when they're out of the water, their tube feet just kind of flop down. They don't have anything to kind of move them around very well. But in between each one of these little tiny spines is where you would find their tube feet. Here's a great picture of a sea urchin with its tube feet all outstretched. Do you see all of those tube feet sticking out? Do you see how they have those little sort of tips, those little circles on the end? And that's what they use to allow them to stick to things. Sometimes they'll actually hold rocks and shells on top of their bodies to help camouflage them where they are in the tide pools or in the kelp forests. But yeah, those are their tube feet. Oh, and this is also a bonus picture because here's another animal that has tube feet that can also be found living in kelp forest called a sea star. So these are the undersized, these are 2 arms of a sea star that we're seeing on the side view of the picture, but they also have tube feet sticking out, and that's what sea stars use to stick to things. So here's another great picture of the tube feet of the bottom of a sea star. And where do you think their mouth is? Yep, just like the sea urchin, right in the center. So where all their arms come together is the mouth of the sea star, and that's where they're able to eat. But they use those tube feet for moving around, helping to stick to things, and bringing their food to their mouth. All right, so that is a great picture. Now, some other people were asking, what are the things behind the fish, and are they corals? So let's go back to our blue cavern picture again, and let's see what kind of things are behind the fish. So we're gonna take a minute and think about why, because another question was, why is the fish next to the rock? So why would the fish be hanging out next to the rock? I see one that's kind of sitting up on the rock, that fish with the bars right here. So they're kind of sitting there, just kind of hanging out. So if they're camouflaging, if they're still and just sitting there, it's a way to help them camouflage where they might not stand out, so it can be protection. Sometimes the fish might hang out underneath the rocks down at the bottom, again, for camouflage and protection, because maybe if they're really still, no one will notice that there's actually a fish hanging out in the shadow of the rock. Now there's also another fish that likes to take advantage of those rocks there, and with its long, skinny shape, it can make its way in between the cracks and crevices of the rocks, which is another reason why you might see these little lines here. And these can be natural spaces in rocks too, where there are little kind of holes and little areas where maybe not all fish would be able to fit, but that green moray eel that just swam by would be able to squeeze its long, skinny body into that space and hide quite nicely. Well, all these things right here, like this is another type of algae. It looks a lot like coral, but again, this is a much cooler environment here where kelp needs to live. And so the water temperature isn't going to be warm enough for coral. But let's go ahead and take a look at one of our other exhibits here, which is a coral reef habitat. So we got to see a lot of fish. They're kind of silvery color. Oh, there's one that has spots there. Oh, and there's that eel with that sort of greenish color. But now let's look at this one. Now this habitat is really different. What do you notice that's different about this habitat? Well, number one, I see a big difference in the color. Do you see so many more bright colors, especially the colors of the fish? They look really different than the fish we were looking at before. We were looking at silvers and kind of darks and browns, the green eel, but look at the pinks and the orange and the yellows, purples. Are there any other colors that you're seeing that I've missed? I see a lot of different colors. But then also, let's look at what else is in there. We saw rocks in the habitat of the kelp forest. Do you see any rocks in this one? Well, it's kind of hard to tell because if you look carefully, it looks like there are some, I don't know, are these bumpy rocks? It looks like, well, maybe this could be rock. Well, this is something that is kind of like a rock because it's hard. It has a hard structure to it, but this is actually coral. And so here we have some coral that's bright and purple, and then we have some corals that they don't look as bright. Well, here's another view into our exhibit here at the aquarium. This is our largest exhibit here, and it's our tropical reef habitat. And look at all the diversity of fishes that you see in here. We saw, oh, I still see the big long tail that was coming off from that stingray that just swam by. Did you notice that stingray? It was kind of hard to miss when we switched over. So yeah, there are stingrays in here. What other types of animals do you notice? How many different kinds of stingrays do you see? Anything else you find interesting? See that one swimming away? Did you notice what kind of fish that one was? So yes, we do have sharks in here, and we do have what looks like hammerhead sharks. They are a type of hammerhead sharks. They're called bonnet head sharks. And so keep your eyes open because we'll probably see some more bonnet head sharks swim through this view as we're watching together. But now, again, what are the things that you're noticing? Christina was mentioning how much faster those other fish seem to be. And you're right. Those small fish did seem to be swimming a lot faster than those big, giant ones. And I never told you the name of those giant fish at the bottom, did I? Those are called giant sea bass. So giant sea bass are the names of those really big fish with the dark spots on their body in our kelp forest habitat. So this one right here, this is called a giant sea bass. And they are huge. They can get 500 pounds. So they can be really, really large, and they can live a really long time, too. So we have some here at the aquarium that are in their 20s. I don't remember how old, but they could live to be, 45, 75. They could be really long-lived fish. So, yeah, you should definitely come and check them out if you get a chance. But if not, you can always watch them from home using our webcams on your computer where you're watching us now. If you go to the webcams, you can view this one, our tropical reef, anytime, as well as our blue cavern exhibit anytime, day or night. You can watch our fish as they're swimming around. Oh, so let's look again. This one right here is an eagle ray. And look at that long, skinny tail that they have. Now, you might be wondering, wait a minute, where is the stinger? Don't they have stingers? I didn't see a stinger on the end of their tail. Well, stingrays don't have stingers at the tip of their tail, like we usually think they do for some reason. It's actually closer to the base of the tail. We call it a barb or a little spine. And let's see if we can look as if this one swims by our camera, we'll see. But right at the base of the tail, right up there, there's a little thing that sticks out straight, and that's the spine that they use for self-defense. So if the animal was to be spooked and something was trying to come at them from above or behind them, all they have to do is flip up their tail, and it causes that little spine to stick up too. And so if something kind of came down on them, they could sting it and get away from the animal trying to eat them. Or if we were walking in the ocean, we were to accidentally step on one, well, then that might not be so pleasant for us, but it would allow the ray to get away. But they only use that for self-defense. That's why we always recommend if you're in the water where there could be stingrays, just kind of drag and shuffle your feet in the water. Because if you drag and shuffle your feet in the water, they'll be able to sense you coming and they'll get out of the way so you don't have to get stung. So always a good idea to keep that in mind if you're in the water where there are stingrays. But it's kind of neat to know that their stingers are not on the tips of their tails like you may have thought. They're actually lying across the top of their tail with the just kind of sticking out straight, so closer to the base of the tail. So we'll have to keep our eyes open and see if we can get a view of those a little bit later. But our coral reef, yes, they're so beautiful and so many different colors. And yes, those fish can move pretty quickly through that coral. Did you notice the body shape looked a little bit different? Let's look at the body shape of this fish. So this fish is a type of a stingray. It's a cow nose ray. They look like they have a nose like a cow, I guess. And so very cute animals. And then if you look right here, if you look really carefully, do you see that dark spot right about where my finger is? That dark line right there is actually, and my friend Miss Talia is using her cursor to show you, that is the spine of the stinger, or the stinger. the spine of the stingray. That's what I'm trying to say. So right there, right lying across the top of the tail is where the stinger is. Kind of a neat view. Thanks, Miss Talia. And so getting back to our tropical reef and all those bright corals that you see, did you happen to notice the shape of the fish as they're swimming in there? Remember those giant sea bass were really round and kind of thick in the middle, and we call that fusiform or football shaped. Would you describe the shape of these animals the same way? Well, this one's kind of big in the middle, right? Oh, but wait a minute. When he started to swim towards us, it looked like it had a little bit different shape. It wasn't round all over. So a lot of the fish that you see in here, they might look from the side, like again, really thick in the middle, and then they come down to the ends. But if they start swimming towards you, you're going to notice that they're a lot skinnier. And we call that a compressed shape. And that compressed shape also helps those fish to hide really nicely in the coral. So here's a beautiful view of a coral reef. And all those fish, look at their shapes and their colors and their patterns. And remember how we were talking about the stripes earlier and how the stripes were horizontal lines on the fish, and then the stripes that go up and down, those were what we call bars. So there's some barred fish in here. There's a barred fish right there. That's called a Convict Tang. And then we also have some with some spots too. Did you notice fish with spots? So we've got bars. You see those barred fish right here? The stripes going up and down. And then we had some spotted fish. And then let's see if there's any. It's harder to find ones with true stripes that go horizontally. So we'll have to keep our eyes open. Oh, that one looks like it might have had one stripe going the length of its body. Oh, maybe that one back there too. So kind of fun to keep your eyes open for these different markings on fish. And then someone asked, why are the stingray's stingers on top of their tail? That's a good question. So let's think about it. Again, if we were to accidentally step on one that was buried in the sand, they spend a lot of their lives lying on the bottom. Did you notice that flat shape that they have? That's kind of the opposite of these fish that are upright like this that we were talking about, the compressed shape. It's what we call depressed. They're flattened like a pancake. So if you were to take your hands together and go like this, that's called depressed. That's a depressed shape, and that's the shape that stingrays have, which is great for helping them sit on the bottom of the ocean and bury in the sand. And so that means if they have a threat that's going to come at them, if something is going to scare them or try to eat them, that means it's coming from the top of them, from above them. And so having that stinger on the top is perfect. It's perfect placement for that animal to be able to protect itself if there's a threat coming to them from the top. So good question. All right, well, I realize we are already out of time. And so here we got that beautiful view of our eagle ray. And here's one that has, here's another fish that has some bars on its body. I was hoping we could find some good fish with stripes, but I guess we're just going to have to keep observing and another day. And so if you're watching our webcams, keep your eyes open and see if you can find any fish that have stripes that go horizontally across their body. But I hope that you've enjoyed checking out these two different habitats we have at the aquarium, our blue cavern kelp forest habitat, and now our tropical reef habitat, and seeing how very different they can be. So again, this one's a very warm habitat and lots of diversity, which means there's lots of different kinds of animals all in this one area and so many different colors. But spend some time enjoying this. I hope you have a wonderful break as we're enjoying we're not taking a break from Aquarium Online Academy. We have more online academies this week, but we hope you enjoy your break from school if you're taking a winter break right now. And thank you for joining us at the aquarium, and feel free to drop in, send us a note. If you, again, have any other questions, we can put that number or that email for you up on the screen again. We'd love to hear from you, and have a wonderful day, everyone. Thanks for joining us again. Bye.